are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the College Loop Podcast, episode 88 of the College Loop Podcast. Just me and Daniel today. Colin is, I believe, right now in Nashville, getting ready for SEC Media Days with Auburn and Hugh Freeze and Jason. Not Jason. Is it Jason Jones? It's Luke Deal, Cameron Stutz, and
I think it might be Jason Jones.
Is it Jason Jones? I'm making sure I'm not just completely losing my mind there. But yeah, Colin is living his best life in Nashville. Tar is enjoying Star Wars night with the Making Bacon. And me and Daniel are here to record this episode of the College Loop. Daniel, how you doing, buddy?
Dylan, I'm doing good. I'm coming to you live from Chicago, Illinois today. On a little bit of a vacation, watching my beloved Boston Red Sox take on the Chicago Cubs at Wrigley Field. My dad and I came in yesterday. We're going to be here all weekend. So any Loop fans in the Chicago area, if you see me out and about, feel free to come say hello.
And he'll be charging you $5 per autograph.
Oh, yeah.
But to talk about some Auburn news, Auburn picked up yet another commit. There we go. Not transfer quite yet. Jalyn Crawford, the 4-star defensive back from Parkview High School in Lilburn, Georgia. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Did you know that there's a city in Georgia called Houston, or spelled Houston, but it's pronounced like Houston? It's like weird.
I think I knew that simply
because I was Houston.
Yeah, because I was watching Titletown High on Netflix about Rush Probst and Valdosta, and they played them. So I knew just because of that. So for 3 days I've known that.
It's such a weird thing. But yeah, Auburn picked up their 4th defensive back of the class of 2024, a class that combines Jalyn Crawford with Amon Lane and Jaden Lewis and Kinsley Faustin, all going to be joining that Auburn defensive back room in the 2024 season. And Auburn is now up 10 spots than they were this morning, from 47 up to 37 with just 11 commits. And from 1 to 37, you will not find a team who has as few commits as Auburn does right now. And I think it's only time will tell where this team's going to be, where this recruiting class is going to be. And I think it's just because you just need a little bit more people committing.
Yeah, definitely with Hugh Freeze, we've seen him going after more quality over quantity, which, there's not really a problem with either way, I'd say. Well, if you don't have quality recruits, you're not going to win. But, just he wants to have the best blue chip rating possible, which I feel like is how you put together a winning team. So, yeah, Crawford is the 159th player in the country, the 16th cornerback, and the 23rd player in the state of Georgia. So he's held his own in Georgia's highest classification of 7A, a 4.6 40. He's got the measurables, Dylan.
Yeah, and I mean, you read what people have been saying about how he plays. He's a aggressive corner, and he gets right in your face. And I think the way. Yeah, an aggressive cover corner, which we talked about in the last episode, I believe, where we brought up that's kind of ipso facto thing about Auburn corners is they are aggressive and they love to play man. And that's kind of the corners we've been seeing as of late. And the best corners that we know of off the dome, Carlton Davis and Roger McCreary, those two were big man coverage guys. And so was DJ James, I would say, as well. But yeah, and I don't know if you watched his commitment video, and if you haven't at home, I'm just going to go and let you know he gave everyone a heart attack who was rooting for him to commit to Auburn. And if I wanted to reach my Auburn hat up above me, I'd reenact it. So have you ever heard of hat theory when it comes to commits?
Is that something to do with the hats that are furthest away from him, or hats that they weren't even considering at school? Or
it's kind of, yes. And it's also if a hat looks worn, or if it's just plopped on the table, it kind of bodes well for some. But the Auburn hat was brand new, I could tell. But the Florida, it was Florida on the right, LSU in the middle, Auburn on the left. The Florida was not even in his back burner, because the Florida hat was all crumpled up and just kind of flopped on the table. So it's LSU and Auburn, and they picked up the Auburn hat. He put it on, took it off, threw it back on the table, then went under the table, grabbed another Auburn hat and put that on and said War Eagle.
Oh my God. I on a text thread I'm on, some people on it were freaking out about that because they saw the video. I haven't had the opportunity to watch it yet. But now after we get done here, I'm gonna go take a look.
Yeah, and it's everywhere too.
A heart attack since I know what happens, but I gotta see it.
Yeah, in the moment it was not fun because Jalyn Crawford is one of those big guys that we've been waiting to commit for a while. He's now the third best recruit in the class 2024 for Hugh Freeze's first full cycle as Auburn's football coach, and a class with like I said earlier, 11 commits, but 9 of which are 4 stars if you look at their composite, and it's just crazy. Bryce Kane, I think he's one of the lower rated 3-star or 4. He's a lower rated 4-star per 24/7, but he is higher up in his composite rankings, and it's just an overall great class starting off right now. The class is not even close to being over yet because we still have, I think, 4 more commits this month, in the at least the next upcoming month, 30 days.
That sounds right.
And just going through those, and 3. There we go. 3. DeMarcus Riddick commits, I believe, next week in about 11 days. KJ Bolden and Jalewis Solomon both will committing on August 5th. Those two, that's 2 4-stars and 2 5-stars and a 4-star. DeMarcus Riddick, of course, gonna go to Big Cat Weekend after committing as well. So yeah, big names to keep your ears out for. And again, this Auburn class is going to finish higher than it is right now. I know people have been kind of, as an Arkansas fan, I think, was kind of like bashing Auburn for like thanking Hugh Freeze for this class or like praising him for the recruiting job he's been doing. The only thing keeping this Auburn class from being any higher than 37 is the fact that they only have 11 commits. I don't understand the whole hatred to hating that your coach is getting high caliber players.
Right. As of now, if you look at this Arkansas class, it's ranked 17th in the country. They have 16 commits, 9 4-stars, 7 3-stars. But if you look at it, the average rating per commit, 90.15. So,
I mean, Auburn's is 90.83. So Auburn's bringing in better talent than Arkansas is. And the only reason Arkansas's class is even that high is because that's 7 3-stars, 7 to Auburn's 2. They have the same amount of 4-stars, but I do think Auburn is going to end up getting a 5-star in this class, no matter who that be. But yeah, it's looking good for recruiting. It's going to be one of the biggest months in recruiting we've seen as an Auburn fan base in a hot minute, and it can only go up from here. Trevon Reed always says, "What is it? We're not done yet."
We're not done yet.
So take that in mind as you go into the next month talking about recruiting. But we are going to talk about the Auburn running back room to continue our position-by-position preview series. And we're going to do it one of the most loaded positions on this Auburn team. And one that I think is kind of flying under the radar per like Phil Steele, who has Auburn as the 5th best running back room in the SEC. And as loaded as the SEC is, he has them as the 17th running back room in the country. And that room is, of course, consisting of Jarquez Hunter, Damari Alston, Brian Battie, Jeremiah Cobb, and Sean Jackson, and some other guys who are also mixed in that as well. But Auburn's running back room definitely goes like 4 or 5 deep.
Oh, yeah. All these guys are talented. I think they'll all see the field this year. I think Jarquez is going to be good to go. I don't know if anything else has been confirmed, but I haven't seen anything.
He's been training a lot, so we're gonna take that as he thinks he's playing, and I think the PR team has done a great job with that. But we are not going to go any further into the off season schematics that have been going on around that situation.
Probably smart for a family friendly podcast such as this one.
Yeah, definitely. But looking at this room, Jarquez Hunter definitely is the blockbuster name last season. 7 touchdowns, which was tied for second on the team, right behind Tank Bigsby, who had 10. He also had 600 and I think 7 yards. I think it was 607. And if you look at the back half of that season, he was the leading back for I think the last 3 games of the regular season. I say regular season like Auburn had a postseason last year. The last 3 games of the season, I think that was against Western Kentucky, I think A&M, and Alabama. I'm pretty sure I'm correct in saying that, just because Jarquez Hunter was just the feature back alongside Tank Bigsby, but it seemed that Jarquez had more umph to him in those last 3 games. I think it was just because lack of carries at the earlier points. But yeah, so A&M, 13 carries, 114 yards, no touchdowns for that one. Western Kentucky, he had 13 carries, 109 yards for a touchdown. He also had a passing touchdown against Western Kentucky as well. And then, of course, Alabama, 11 carries, 134 yards against the Crimson Tide in a game that people consider a blowout. I don't consider that 49-27 loss a blowout as much as it could have been if the previous head coach had been let go earlier in the season. But yeah,
that's one of those where it definitely like the scoreboard does not tell an accurate story.
Oh yeah, and looking into going into this season, you add some more beef at running back, and you already have Damari Alston leading the charge behind Jarquez Hunter. And for what I've been hearing about Damari Alston, he is one of the most underrated players on this team. He came in as a 3-star, and he only had 85 rushing yards from 2022. But just what he was able to do whenever he was able to get in open space was special. And watching him perform in the spring, watching what he can do, what he can be, he is going to be a feature back at some point in his Auburn career. And if not, he's just unlucky that he's following up Tank Bigsby, Jarquez Hunter, and then eventually Jeremiah Cobb, who we're going to talk about in length in probably a little bit. But, I mean, you're going into the season with Jarquez Hunter, Damari Alston following up, and then you add in the USF All-American kick returner, Brian Battie, who we've heard nothing but great things about from how he performed this spring. He's fast, he's quick, he's shifty. I want to compare him to Auburn running backs. I think he can be better than some of these guys. I look at like a Corey Grant type running back, like a guy who's fast, he can return kicks, and if you get him in open space, he is going to make your defense pay for it. And that's exactly what you're getting with Brian Battie. And that's already a 3-headed monster right there. And Daniel, I know you had Brian Battie real high up in your top 5 transfer records. I think we all had him in our top 5. I think you had him higher up than we did, just because you saw something special in him.
I do. Particularly in the special teams attack, I feel like he's going to be lethal. I'm expecting 4 or 5 returns for touchdowns this year.
4 or 5. Yeah. Auburn's not even gotten 4 or 5. Like, haven't even gotten 4 kick return touchdowns the past 5 years, dude.
I'm confident.
Well, I say that he was an All-American. That does help his case a lot. And I mean, I think he was a first-team All-American, and I don't know if he won any other awards besides that. And I'm trying to pull him up as I'm talking about him. Yeah, but Brian Battie, 5'7", 170 pounds, rushed for 1,000 yards last year on a USF team that I believe won, one game, if I'm not mistaken. And he can do it all. I mean, he averaged 6.7 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns. Also put up 6.5 yards per catch on 14 catches for 91 yards. And again, you got to remember for that USF team, it was not a good team. It was god awful, as one might say. But I think the biggest name, I don't want to say the biggest name, but eventually going to be the biggest name from that class of 2022 or class of 2023 is going to be Jeremiah Cobb. Yeah. And we've been watching him play. I was starting to panic whenever he didn't sign on early signing day, and I was kind of eager for him to hurry up and sign, because if someone snatches him up, I'm not going to be happy. But the 4-star running back from Montgomery Catholic, dude, he is going to be so him whenever he finally gets the starting job. And I don't think Auburn's going to redshirt this kid at all.
I don't think so either. I think he's just too talented to not play him right away.
Yeah, and 5'11", 191 pounds. I don't think he needs to do anything else. I would say probably beef up, get to 200, because from what I've been hearing about Cobb, dude I think he rivals Battie in speed, and that baffles me. Just a guy who has 20 pounds on one guy also is almost as fast as him. And watching Jeremiah Cobb play at Montgomery Catholic, watching from hearing what I've heard about coaches talking about him, Cadillac loves Jeremiah Cobb. Yeah. And that's just, he's a running back through and through, because he loves coaching running backs. He loves playing running back. Jeremiah Cobb and Fat Burnett are definitely going to be a combo to keep your eye out for in the coming years for the Auburn Tigers. But yeah, just looking at Jeremiah Cobb, dude is going to be good. I mean, at 5'11", to be able to run as fast as he does, as shifty as he is, and he's also a powerful runner. It is crazy to watch happen. And Daniel, I'm going to let you know a fun fact. Do you know who coached the running backs at Montgomery Catholic and Jeremiah Cobb as well?
Jeremy Johnson.
Exactly. So Jeremy Johnson helping out Auburn in the latter years. The as one might say, the La Liga de Football Americano Profesional offensive MVP and champion as well. For all of you people who didn't know that. But I think right there, that's your 4 biggest names in that running back room. And then if you go behind them, you have Sean Jackson, who is a daggum bowling ball of a human being, 5'9", 236 pounds. And I think he's definitely going to hit some carries on the goal line just because he's just going to go forward and fall just because that's what bowling balls do. And I mean, after Sean Jackson, I don't really see a lot of big names. I think Justin Jones and Christian Burnett, the 2 walk-ons, definitely could find their names being called in like blowout games. And I think that they definitely are a little underrated. I think Justin Jones had a really good A-Day, but I don't see them getting very many snaps when you're behind a 4-headed monster and Jarquez, Brian, Damari, and Jeremiah.
Yeah, I agree. There's just that's kind of like the blessing and the curse aspect of having a position group that's so loaded. It's just you get to a point where like there's only one football. So carries are going to be limited, especially towards the latter half of the room. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Everyone will have a chance to show what they can do, and these younger guys will just have to show the extent of their skill set later down the road.
Yeah, and I think we're expecting. I don't know if Jeremiah Cobb is going to get that many carries. I think he's definitely going to go win the season as RB4 just because Damari and Brian are just too good to just give up those backup snaps. And I think you're definitely going to see a lot more of Brian in like passing formations or maybe a wildcat. You could even probably throw in all 3 running backs with just run a triple option for a couple of plays, and that'd probably work out pretty well for you as well. But I could see a world where Hugh wants to give Jeremiah a year to kind of develop under Cadillac. And I can't say that's a bad idea. I think it's a really good. I know he's talented. And I know he probably has more potential than a lot of these running backs in this class or in this room. I think it'd be smart for Hugh Freeze to kind of bite the bullet, redshirt Jeremiah Cobb, let Jarquez, Brian Battie kind of have their last years as college running back, and then bring in the next year with a 3-headed monster and Jeremiah Cobb, Fat Burnett, and a junior Damari Alston. And I think that running back room, Auburn has a chance to have back-to-back running back rooms that just carry the position groups on this team. And I don't think it's arguable.
No. And that added on to the fact that this offensive line, the last year was the floor. I would like to think that it can't get worse. But I think it's going to be noticeably improved this season. So if that really good running back room has a solid offensive line to run behind for a change, that hasn't been the case in past years. I'm really optimistic about just how much they can accomplish.
Yeah, and just to just to go around the horn here, but there's only 2 of us. Give me your stat prediction for, I want to say Jarquez, Damari, and Brian Battie, just to kind of go how many yards is each one going to get all the way down, because this is going to be a rush heavy team. That's just what you get.
I'm going to be bold and say that Auburn has a 1,000-yard rusher. I think it's going to be Jarquez. For Jarquez, give me 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. For Damari, I'm going to go about. I'm gonna kind of take Jarquez's stat line from last year. 675 yards, 7 touchdowns. I think that Damari is going to be somewhere around there. and then Brian Batiste, the third one we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure. I think he'll break 500. I'm going to go about 520, 530, and 4 or 5 touchdowns.
So you have 1,600 and 500 going 1, 2, 3. Right.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm going to give Jarquez, I think he's going to be your workhorse for the majority of the season. I'm going to give him like 1,100 with, I'm going to say 12 touchdowns. I'm going to go Brian Batiste with I'm going to give Brian 400 rushing yards, but I'm also going to give him about 150 receiving yards. And amongst those two, I'm going to go about 7 touchdowns receiving and rushing. And then Damari, I'm going to give him probably around 500 rushing yards and maybe I'm going to say 6 rushing touchdowns on the ground for Damari. So we're both expecting pretty good season from the front back room. And it's kind of hard not to whenever they are as talented and as loaded as they are. And like we said, this room can go 5 deep. It can probably go 6 and 7 deep if you throw in the walk-ons like Justin Jones and Christian Burnett, 2 guys who Auburn was very lucky to pick up as walk-ons. And 2 guys I definitely think are going to earn themselves a scholarship in the coming years.
Yeah, I agree. Because walk-ons make a room better.
Exactly.
In an emergency scenario, you'd have to depend on them. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. And then just in practice every day, it helps. So definitely solid pieces for the program to have.
Yeah, and you know us, College Loop are big walk-on supporters.
We love our walk-ons.
We love walk-ons, the restaurant and the players. But
correct.
To get into some other news following the Auburn football program, DeMario Tolan is no longer with the team. He has stepped away for some, I just want to say probably mental health reasons. I'm not going to go any further into it. I don't think we need to. He has stepped away from the team, which opened up a scholarship spot for Powell Gordon, who entered the portal, I think, in April, and then with an option to return back to the team. And so he has, and I just think the depth piece, that's all Powell Gordon really is. I don't think he's going to be a guy who's competing for one of those starting spots. He's probably just coming back because there's room for him now, and he's just going to be kind of deep in that linebacker core for a core that we don't think is very good.
Yeah, to be not even have a shot at starting in a position group that's just not really that good, it just kind of says what needs to be said about a guy. It'd be cool if he proved us wrong and became one of the best Auburn linebackers of recent history, but I just don't really think that's in the cards. Solid depth guy. He'll get some reps probably this year, but yeah, just kind of another piece in a lackluster position group.
Yeah, and just talk about linebackers for a little bit. Stay tuned because at some point we have to preview that position, and I'm still regretting that we're going to have to someday. Because after Austin Keys and I would say Robert Woodyard, I don't think I want to talk about the rest of them just because they disappointed me year in and year out. But with that, I'm going to talk about another Auburn prediction. I talked about Phil Steele and his running back preview from his magazine. Again, another shameless plug for the best college football magazine out there right now because the other 2 are not good. And if you know which other 2 there are, that's what I'm talking about. But the Spurs Up Show, which is I believe, just a South Carolina Gamecock show. I've never really listened to them, but they're big with. I think Jake Crane is like real big with the Spurs Up guys. But they're releasing their SEC predictions, and they have Auburn going 6-6, going 2-6 in SEC conference games. And just to read down the list, starting off the season 4-0 with wins over UMass, Cal, Samford, and at Texas A&M. Then you go on a 3-game losing streak with Georgia, LSU, and Ole Miss. You pick up a win versus Mississippi State. Then you lose at Vanderbilt. Then another loss at Arkansas. Then you come back and beat New Mexico State. And then you lose to Alabama in the Iron Bowl. This makes no sense to me. I don't know how you can – I don't know what they're seeing, how you can beat A&M in College Station, then turn around and lose to Vanderbilt.
Yeah, this just seems like one of those things where they're just kind of throwing darts at the wall. And we're like, we're going to get this wrong anyway. Might as well make it flashy. But I'm not really sure.
Yeah, and I say this a lot with A&M kind of getting. I threw myself to the sharks earlier today by putting up a graphic about where I ranked a certain A&M head coach. I don't follow the hype around Texas A&M. I also don't follow the hype around Arkansas going into the season. And I get the recruiting class right now is looking pretty good for those 4 stars that they're picking up. And for what it's worth, I don't think they picked up they lost Kendall Briles. And I think that was the biggest loss to their in their offseason. It doesn't matter who transferred out, it doesn't matter who declared for the draft, who just like flat out just left the team. Kendall Briles was the biggest loss for Arkansas. I don't follow the hype outside of KJ Jefferson and Raheem Sanders on that team because we saw Arkansas last year go 5-7. We saw A&M go 5-7, and now both those teams are going into the 2023 season with all the hype in the world. And I love that they have Auburn beating A&M in College Station. I don't understand the back-to-back losses to Vanderbilt and Arkansas, especially if you're beating Mississippi State. And I'm just going to go ahead and go into another graphic they had. They have LSU losing 1 game to Mississippi State. And they have Mississippi State losing to Arizona the week prior, then beating LSU.
Yeah, I just don't really get these predictions. I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to be different is my one guess.
Yeah, and I get it. SEC's wild. College football's a wild sport.
Sure.
I refuse to believe that Auburn is going to lose to Ole Miss, beat Mississippi State, lose to Vanderbilt, and then lose to Arkansas all in a 4-game span. That just seems very weird to me. And I think if Auburn starts at 4-0, they're not only winning 2 more games after winning 4. Auburn's floor this season, I think, is 7-5 at the bare minimum. And we'll get more into that whenever on the next show where we preview Auburn's, I believe, 3rd away game when they travel to Baton Rouge, the real Death Valley, to play in another night game in Tiger Stadium, one of the most probably the most hostile environment to play in. And I say that with Beaver Stadium in mind. I think that those two are at least at the bare minimum 1A, 1B, and the hardest stadium to play in.
I've been to both. I went to them both 2 weeks apart from each other in 2021, as did many Auburn fans. And it was definitely, at least for me as a fan, it was louder in Penn State. Granted, LSU wasn't insane that season. They were pretty mediocre, on the downside of mediocre, heading towards bad. And the day after the Auburn game, Penn State was the number 4th ranked team in the country. So, forgive me, there's an ambulance going by this hotel. So if you hear that, sorry. But, yeah, just kind of Penn State's tough. And I feel like a lot of people in the SEC have that SEC bias, which it's a little bit understandably so, but that is a very, very good home field advantage, probably the best in college football.
Exactly, and a game that Hugh Freeze is going to be probably has very, very much highlighted on his schedule, because at this point it's going to be a nice little trivia night question: who's the last head coach to beat LSU in Baton Rouge? Yep. And it's Brian Harsin. So let's hope that Hugh Freeze can maybe shock the world, but also at some point very soon beat LSU in Baton Rouge. But with that ends our football segment. We're going to now get into some baseball news, where Auburn picked up yet another transfer from Jacksonville State, keeping that in the state pipeline very hot when they picked up transfer infielder Javon Hernandez from, again, the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. I'm about to say it again. Last season, he had a .397 batting average with 7 home runs and a .56 slugging percentage with a fielding percentage of .968.
A solid pickup for Butch Thompson. This infield's going to need some restructuring after
losing Bryson Ware and Cole Foster.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. So, yeah, just kind of plug and chug, see who goes where, and I think that Javon will make it easier.
Yeah, and another position group that we're going to talk about in a second, and just keep talking about this So I'm trying to remember all the positions Auburn has already picked up in the transfer portal, and I know one of them was a pitcher, and I think one of them was a shortstop. Or am I thinking Auburn lost 5 incoming players to the MLB draft, and one of those was Sam Mongelli, a guy that we talked about before on the show, who was definitely, or probably was going to take over Cole Foster's spot at the third base position, and just a few other guys that we just lost. We lost 2 shortstops and second baseman from high school. It was a rough MLB draft, but I mean, technically they signed with Auburn, so they were Auburn draftees, but it still sucks.
They might not all still go.
The first rounders are probably going to go. I might have to say the first rounders are going to go to the MLB.
Yeah, probably so. Sorry, my dad was coughing, which is why I muted myself mid-sentence. Very unideal circumstances to have to record when you're with someone, but it's okay. Yeah, just kind of it'll be a kind of transitional year for the Tigers. The roster will look different, but I don't think it will necessarily be a bad year. I could see it going very well. I could see Auburn hosting their 3rd straight regional.
And the team won't look so different as Bobby Pierce has announced that he is coming back. One of the big names who did not get drafted from this previous draft class. One of those being Joseph Gonzalez, who we talked about last show, who's going to be a really, really big help to this pitching rotation because he didn't leave. Right. Bobby Pierce is back. So your outfield now returns 2 out of the 3 starters. I think Pierce was a little injured last year, but he still played in a good bit of games. Bobby Barrels, as they call him. But yeah, you return 2 out of the 3 outfielders, which I think is huge because one of those guys is Chris Stanfield.
Sure.
Yeah, and you lost another dude, and Mike Bello, who I didn't understand why, but he entered the portal. And that could be for any reasons, but yeah, Mike Bello is gone. He's a guy I think was dealing with some injuries as well, but never really got on the field and stayed on the field. So Auburn lost an outfielder and gained an outfielder in the same day from last year's team. And the last bit of news we have for this episode, Ryan Bliss is now moving up to the AAA in Reno. So big ups to Ryan Bliss, who's been taking the minors by storm as of late and probably soon getting called up by the Diamondbacks. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. The Diamondbacks are definitely a team without a lot of talent on their roster and not doing so hot. So I definitely think come September, we'll see Ryan Bliss play for the big league club.
Yeah, and he's going to add a lot to that team, speed, his ability to hit the ball. I think he moved up, and then in the same day he had a double, and then he had a stolen base on the same day, or at least the same 24 hours. And yeah, Ryan Bliss is definitely a special player who we're going to be hearing about for years to come. Hopefully, potentially the best player to ever play in the MLB. Fingers crossed. Just for the Auburn pipeline, which would be awesome. But yeah, Daniel, go ahead and let everybody know where they can love you, find you, and support you.
You can find my written work for the Auburn Wire or for 1819 News, and you can follow me on Twitter at Daniel J. Locke.
All right, and of course, I'm Dylan Larck at your boy Tank on Twitter. If you're watching, it's just right there. And if you're also watching, go ahead and scroll down, go click the links for our Twitters in the description. And while you're down there, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. Leave us some questions. Leave us more Theoretical Thursdays. We have one that we got yesterday that was really good. I'm not going to let y'all know just quite yet because y'all got to go to the comments and go find it yourselves. And also like the videos. Just to let us know that you're loving the content. But you can also go follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And that's at the College Loop. We're not on MySpace, but again, I told y'all 1,000 subs and we'll be getting on MySpace. And if you will listen to us, we have us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and pretty much everywhere you get your podcasts. But with all that being said, it's been the College Loop Podcast.